Welcome. Uh-oh, why am I? Welcome. Let's try this again. This is a this is a work session of the Board of Pickens County Commissioners. I am going to call for a special meeting of the Board of Social Services. And Nan Sundin, I believe this is your last meeting, special meeting of the Board of Social Services. And I will not be here next week, so I'm going to say to you, Nan, you are going to be missed. We know where to find you if we need you, so don't be sneaking out of the valley. And I worked with you for a great many years, and it's always been a great joy and experience working with you, Nan. So I am envious of you starting off in a new career path, which is called retirement. So enjoy and be safe. All right, and don't forget to let us know what you're doing and what you're up to. Now I'm going to turn the meeting over to you.
Oh, do you need a motion to go into this or not?
No, apparently we don't need a motion to go in or out. I checked with the boss over here.
Oh, okay. That's new. Excellent. We love new rituals. It's good. So thank you, Patty, and thanks for those kind words. I will be in Carbondale. You'll know where to find me. Parts of Carbondale are still part of Pickens County, as Francie knows. So anyway, it's such an honor and a privilege to be at the Board of Social Services meeting today. My last one, but the first one for Lindsay Maish as the new Director of Human Services. Congratulations to her. It was a rigorous recruitment, and we had really great applicants, and so excited for Lindsay to land the job. I am going to we're going to go through a little bit of a regular presentation. We hope to, if there's discussion, we can go off presentation mode. We're going to follow much of the agenda item summary. So I'm just going to start. Lindsay's going to set up the presentation and start on slide 2. This is the fourth quarter Board of Social Services meeting, and a reminder that the Board of County Commissioners serve in a statutory role as the Board of Social Services. Your obligation is to oversee the expenditures of the department, and that the payrolls, the benefits that we issue are going to the right people. It's the checks and balances for the state of Colorado. Colorado is a state supervised, county administered human services system. Not all states are like this, but what this means is that the county runs the department, but we are obligated to we report to the state, the Department of Human Services and Healthcare Policy and Financing. And their job is to really oversee that we're doing everything that we're supposed to do by law, all the mandated services. So in Pickens County, our department provides these services: economic assistance. We run the Healthy Community Fund, which brings in about a little over $3 million a year that we give away for the social safety net. Protective services, child and adult protection, prevention and intervention, senior services, the meals, programming and advocacy, and then veteran services is part of our division. It's also a mandated service to help veterans with claims and resources. We do contract out services. A mandated service, child support services, is contracted to Garfield County, and they presented a little bit in November at our third quarter report. And we're really grateful for their partnership. And then we also contract with Goodwill for LEAP, low-income energy assistance eligibility applications. And I think that those are the primary sets of functions that we have. So your job today will be to review the expenditures and then make a motion to approve them, Patty, and then we'll review the payrolls or the direct benefits for services. And so then you'll make a motion to approve that if it works. And then what we want to do is we're going to talk to you a little bit about some legislation that's pending that we're watching. We're going to talk a little bit about some of our initiatives. And Patty actually asked for an update on something called the cliff effect, which is where people make too much for low-income eligibility programs, but not enough to live successfully, and they live in what we call the cliff effect. So Sam is going to present that. And if there's time, we have some annual program numbers that we always give you in the fourth quarter. So that's scheduled for the end of the agenda. So I will turn it over to Audrey Warner, who is our finance analyst, to share the expenditure report.
Great. Thank you, Nan, and welcome, Audrey.
Thank you, Nan, for the introduction. Audrey Warner, financial analyst. Today we are looking at our calendar year end, January through December 2021. I won't go through every line item in detail, but this chart does break out our different program areas for your review. I will just touch on some of the key points to wrap up the year. And so again, this does cover the 2021 calendar budget. We're reporting today on the fourth quarter, which is October through December. However, I did want to just put the reminder out there, as I usually do, that our human services programs follow an allocation of a state fiscal year, which is July 2021 through June of 2022. So I just wanted to go over the total programs. So in our fourth quarter, human services program expenditures are at 102%, which is right on track for budget. Our program revenues are at 109%, which results in a surplus position, which is fantastic news. TANF, I did just want to put a reminder out there as well that all of those staff salaries are actually budgeted in our economic assistance and admin area. And so that's why it usually looks a little bit higher for the expenditures in that particular area. And then childcare, there is an item to note there. Our human services, we continued to see that the expenditures are a little low. And again, that's just due to the COVID variant, facility closures, taking children to care less often due to fear of exposure in relation to the pandemic. But overall, the budget versus actual looked really good for the year end, with revenues higher than expenditures, aside from that TANF area that I mentioned. And so, yeah, we've done really well for the year. And then I also have the next slide is our expenditures by quarter, which gives a nice snapshot of how we've done quarter to quarter. And that's what we'll be asking for your vote on. And if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Do I have any hands raised from the board? Greg.
Patty, Greg here.
Oh, Greg, I don't see a hand up for you, Greg.
Okay, my hand's up actually.
Oh,
but,
there's your hand.
There it is.
I see the hand.
Okay. I just, looking back to the last page, just on the adult services, I just would, if you could explain that to me. The TANF, I'm not sure I understand completely yet, just the way the accounting is done. But then adult protection revenue is 138%. I'm just going through, if you could talk about the adult protection. I'm looking at the numbers and trying to understand. And I guess the question is, where does the surplus or deficit get? What happens to that? How does that get carried over? Hopefully that's a clear question. I can try to make it clearer, but I'm just trying to understand how this works.
Sure, Audrey, is that something that you were wanting me to? Okay.
If you could speak to the adult protection, just because I don't know exactly what's been going on in that particular program.
Okay. Well, I may have to defer to Nan because, how I understand this is that we exceeded as far as the revenue, what was expected. We got a higher than expected revenue. And then our expenditures were lower. And why that is, I think this year, you'll see in some of the data that I provide, we've had a little bit of a reduction in some of our adult protection time and the cases that we've had over the last couple of years. And so that may impact that. That's typically an area where we do overspend because we have a staff member designated for adult protection work, and being in a smaller county, their allocation they typically give us doesn't cover that full expenditure. So I'm a little curious on this one too. And Nan, I was just wondering if you had, with your experience, any insight on why it may look that way at this point?
My guess is that it happened during closeout and that we maybe got some surplus funding in July that would have covered some of our overages. The other thing, and yeah, that's my best guess. It generally has to do with closeout of the state fiscal year and the fact that we got reimbursed more than, we always report our expenditures, but we don't always get reimbursed for them. And so my guess is that's what happened in July, August when there was closeout. And then we went back to overspending. It's interesting that the entire Northwest is overspent in admin and adult protection. So the whole state and the Human Services Directors Association are looking at the allocations. I've been on the Adult Protection Allocation Committee, and they're completely rethinking how they allocate funds because of the over expenditures statewide.
Okay, I guess my next question would be, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of clarity. We're kind of guessing on what's happened, and I don't have a clear enough picture of it. Is there a chance that you can come back to us at some point with, come back to us in a few months or whenever, maybe it's at the fiscal year, just to get an understanding of how that works? I feel like I owe that to everyone to understand this, and I don't yet.
Sure, absolutely, we can come back. It's always something to celebrate when the revenues are higher than we expect. So sometimes we don't pay attention to it. We're looking for the deficits, but we'll absolutely do that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board on this? I'm not seeing any hands up, so I do need a motion to, what's that? Oh, Kelly. How come she's, oh yeah, Kelly, sorry.
Hi, thanks, Patty. No, I was anticipating your next statement. So I was going to make a motion to approve the fourth quarter 2021 expenditures.
Thank you. You anticipated my next statement correctly. So I need a second, please.
I'll second.
I have a motion from Kelly, a second from Francie. Any other questions from the board? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great.
Aye.
Aye.
Got everybody there? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So the next slide is payrolls, and that's Sam Lander-Casper.
Hi, Sam.
Hey there, Sam Lander-Casper. I manage the Economic Assistance Department for Pitkin County. If we could move the slideshow forward, I think we're still on the previous, or no, sorry, we're at the, I was wrong there. So what we're looking at here are the fourth quarter payrolls for the Economic Assistance Department for 2021. These are the direct payrolls, meaning direct expenditures for benefits issued to our customers. And since it's the end of the year, I wanted to just run through each category here and kind of call out some of the information that we're seeing here. So the first program is the Aid to Needy Disabled program, A&D. And this is a cash assistance program that provides a cash benefit to anyone who qualifies, which is anyone between the ages of 18 and 64 who has a disability determination or is waiting on a disability determination from Social Security. As you can see, the issuance for this program is quite low. It's been that way historically. The main issue that drives this is that the enrollment process is quite complicated. There's also very low income limits to qualify, which are a maximum of $189 gross income per month, which is also the low maximum benefit amount of $189 a month. So up here, we typically see participation in that program being fairly low. One thing that might help would be an enrollment specialist that could help these folks with the process, which had been discussed at the state level and was in process at one point, but that ended up not happening. So that's something we might be looking at as a regional option to help increase enrollment in this program. The next program we have is the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program, or the CCAT program. This program provides assistance paying for childcare for eligible individuals. And as you can see over the last couple years, the issuance has been declining. Audrey did touch on it a little bit. We believe that this is most likely due to the pandemic. We can't pinpoint it right now. We are in discussions with Kids First and childcare providers to really see what the root cause of this is. We don't know if it's due to staffing issues, or people are just opting not to bring their children back to care. But we do want to look into this and find out what's going on so that we can better serve our community, because during the pandemic, the entry income limits were actually raised, which we would have expected to result in an increase in enrollment if the income limits were expanded, and we didn't see that corresponding response. So that's something that we're going to be looking into, because historically we're overspent on our allocation for this program, and we worked to really raise that allocation over the years preceding the pandemic. And there is the concern that if we continue to be underspent, we'll see that allocation reduced, which if the demand increases, we don't want to be behind there again. The next program that you'll see here is the Old Age Pension. This is another cash assistance program. This program is for older adults, so folks over the age of 60 who aren't receiving the full Social Security benefit. You'll see over the last 3 years it has increased regularly. That is mostly due to cost of living adjustments that come down from the federal government. We have seen pretty stable enrollment in that program, no real increases or decreases across the board. Next, we have the Low Income Energy Assistance Program, known as LEAP. That obviously has grown a lot throughout the pandemic. What's interesting about 2021 is that even though we're not seeing as much demand, we are seeing higher issuance, which is great. And this is mostly related to expansion of the program and what it pays for. Prior to 2020, it really paid simply for heating costs. But now they've expanded that to cover water bills for eligible individuals who have water bills. It also covers additional utilities, and it can also, if the applicant is eligible, cover a past due balance on their account, in addition to approving them for additional benefits throughout the season. So what we're really seeing there isn't necessarily an increase of participating members, but we're seeing folks in Pickens County getting a lot more help from the program to help keep them up to date with their heating costs, which during increased inflation and cost of living and everything, that's a really great thing to see there. Our next program is the Colorado Works program, which is another cash benefit program. It's also known as TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. And we have seen a significant decrease in the last year for that program, which is primarily related to the way benefits were issued during the pandemic. We helped a lot of families with what is known as a diversion payment, an emergency diversion payment during the pandemic, which allowed us to issue substantial funds to help these families with the public health emergency. However, once a family has been awarded a diversion, that means that they are no longer eligible for that same type of assistance for 24 months. So we aren't seeing people reapplying for that. And the other side of this program, which is known as basic cash assistance, is much like the Aid to Needy Disabled program. It has very low income limits, and the benefit amount is quite small, and the program is quite intensive. So that's where we're seeing kind of that lower issuance this year. We are working with using these funds, and you saw that in the previous slides, to help write contracts with some of the providers in our area who are providing supportive services to our families, and we can use our TANF allocation to help support those providers who we contract with. And finally, we have the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is also known as food assistance. And again, this year, 2021, you'll see is very similar to 2020, with about a 50% increase in issuance. This is mostly due to the ongoing emergency food assistance benefits that are being authorized by the federal government, Food and Nutrition Services, on a month-to-month basis. That is ongoing. We find out generally 1 or 2 months ahead of time when the next month will be approved. So as of right now, those benefits are expected to continue through March. But depending on what happens with the public health emergency, that it could be ongoing or it could end at the end of the public health emergency. Are there any questions about any of those payrolls or programs?
All right, let's see. Do we have any questions from the board?
If I could add while you're assessing that, Patty, we're learning that statewide CCAP is underspent. We are not the only ones, and the state is starting to consider how they might use the unused dollars, and they're surveying counties. So you might hear this discussion at CCI, for those of you who go. And we, of course, would be in favor of using those unspent funds, especially if the state assumes our maintenance of effort or our copay for those dollars.
Okay, thank you, Nan. So I'm not seeing any questions, Kelly?
Thanks, Nan and Sam. Related to that, I'm wondering, there are some rule changes. It looks like CCAP program is undertaking. Are any of those targeted towards expanding the use of the program, as far as you know? And you know, if you have any ideas or any message directly on this you want us to carry forward, you know, let me know.
So we are seeing some changes around. One thing that they have done this year is they created a grant program for childcare providers. So based on their quality rating, these providers have been able to get some monthly payments to help support hiring staff, increasing childcare slots. And I believe Kids First let us know that every provider they were working with who was eligible had applied. So we're going to see some funds coming in there that they've reallocated. And I know that they had asked us about increasing the income limits for the program, which honestly here we don't know what impact that would have. I think based on kind of the anecdotal information and discussions we've had, that I think if we really wanted to see some help for childcare providers in Pitkin County, it would be more helpful to create more funding like that that's supporting additional staff, or could help with infrastructure so that folks could maybe open new facilities and things like that. Increasing our income limit eligibility, I don't think is going to draw in that many more folks, but expanding provider capability would have an impact throughout the entire county.
One thing that we have that a lot of counties don't have is we have Kids First that provides the tuition assistance after our threshold ends at 245% federal poverty level. So if the income threshold goes up, we just take more of Kids First cases. And you know, we could assess once we know what the income threshold is, how many families that might be. We've done that before. So I hope that answers your question, Kelly.
Yeah, it does. I guess, is there any conversation towards not always, I guess, opening up the funding so it's not always directly tied to a provider? Like I'm thinking of like Friends and Family Network that people have relied on for care during the pandemic.
So that is an option that currently exists, and we can work with Garfield County to create what they're called exempt providers. The issue we run into is that the state maximum payment is quite small. It's less than half of what they'll pay to a registered and certified or licensed provider. And the other issue we run into is it limits how many children and based on relationship who can be in the home. So financially, it's not particularly helpful for those folks who are looking at it. They can't really run a self-employment business, obviously with the licensing issues. And you know, it would. I think when I worked in Eagle County, the only time we really saw that was really maybe grandparents who were taking care of grandchildren. And we just haven't had much interest in that. I know our staff do raise that issue with folks who are having trouble finding locations and slots for their kids, but we just haven't had anyone take us up on that.
Okay, thanks. I always love you guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
One of the biggest issues around childcare really is the creation of the new Office of Early Childhood that is separating from the Department of Human Services, and they're creating their own division. And there's still a whole bunch of controversy about which programs go, and then a lot of questions about what universal preschool is going to look like in the state of Colorado. And so the team will be watching that, and I would imagine for the first quarter report, we could bring some updates around the impacts to Pickens County with the pending legislation.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there any other questions from the board before I call for a motion? Because I do believe we need one to approve the fourth quarter payrolls. Okay.
I'll make the motion to approve the fourth quarter payrolls.
Thank you, Francie. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great, thank you, Kelly. I have a motion, I have a second. Further questions? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Motion passes 5-0. All right, moving on.
Excellent questions. Thank you so much. We are going to just talk briefly about some of these things that are in the memo, some of the legislation. And so I'll just start with the Works program with Sam and go from there.
All right, so House Bill 220296 is discussing modifications to the Colorado Works program. It's one of these discussions that's kind of going around with what childcare is doing as well. These two programs are closely related, and you know, it's a little complicated with them coming from different funding streams and being located in different offices. But this bill is to allow the State Board of Human Services to utilize eligibility criteria from other public assistance or entitlements programs when promulgating rules for determining and verifying eligibility for the Works program. What really would happen here is it would allow for an increase in cash assistance to make sure that it's keeping up with the cost of living, which is something that's very important. I don't know the exact date, but the Colorado Works benefit amounts were determined sometime, I believe in the 70s. Nan, you might know better than me. But it's been quite some time since they've been updated, so they're not really keeping current with what we're seeing now, which has led to some of the issues we talked about around low enrollment. It would also make improvements to how TANF serves families, so once again, updating the rules to be more reflective of current situation, reducing the cliff effect, which is something we're going to be talking about here in a bit, where folks transition from receiving assistance to no longer receiving assistance, and that loss of support that they have there. And then improving how we engage and conduct outreach with our families. As it mentions in the memo, one of the implications of this bill could be to increase the increase in basic cash assistance could result in decreases in other areas, possibly the child care assistance program. But we're just going to continue to monitor that and see how that's going to work out.
Nice, I'll take the next one. Thanks. Are there any questions on the modifications to the Colorado Works program?
I am not seeing any.
Great. Okay, I'll do the overview for Senate Bill 22106, which is increasing accountability and transparency in Colorado's public behavioral health system. I think everyone's probably heard of this and some recent investigations into the Colorado's behavioral health safety net found that there's some pretty serious issues with the system itself, and that it's antiquated in many ways. Many of the organizations responsible for paying and holding providers, that's the RAE, the Regional Accountability Entities, MSOs, managed service organizations, and ASOs, the administrative service organizations, are those that are comprised of providers that receive funding from these organizations. And it's them that are collectively responsible for really hundreds of millions in taxpayer funding. So this bill is really aiming to make many reforms to increase the oversight of providers that may have conflicts of interest and amend the state's contracts with the RAIs, MSOs, and ASOs so that they can mitigate the conflicts of interest with the providers that they're managing. What else? So the intention of these reforms is to really lead to further, more accountability and transparency, more efficient use of the taxpayer dollars, start to restore some of the community trust that we've all been reading about in the newspapers, in these payer organizations, and ensure that patient care is ultimately the priority when there's decisions that are being made in this behavioral health system in Colorado. So we understand in human services that these changes may impact our current local behavioral health system of care. We're following these pretty closely just to understand how it may influence what's currently in place. I will hand it over to Matt if there's no, oh, Greg has a question.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, I think we've all been following this, and I'd love to just hear your thoughts, because you've been you're right in the middle of all of this, I think, over the years. At least you know all the players, and Nan as well. Has the responsiveness of our organizations changed, like the service providers, the RAEs? Are you seeing a change in their responsiveness and their outreach? I think I have, and I just love to compare notes.
So I would say that we have experienced a change in the responsiveness. I don't know that I have enough information right now to understand if it's good or not good. So we're still kind of learning. I think that this reform will be important, and just recognizing that what was happening before wasn't working. So I do think that we're seeing, you know, when they divided the regions, that's one of the changes that we saw. We saw kind of different groups being in different accountability entities and trying to, I think as those changes are all happening, it's a little messy. And we're still trying to put these pieces together of who manages what and where the transparency is in it. So I'm hopeful that this will help to kind of flip this a little bit so that we have better responsiveness. Nan,
Great. That's all I can hope for.
Yeah, I would add, you know, that we're hoping to see changes. I understand Garfield is beginning to feel some changes with Mind Springs. And we, of course, are very happy with our site manager here in Aspen, and her responsiveness to us is extraordinary. And I just want to add that I know that Matt has had really good experiences with the RAI, the Regional Accountable Entity, around the family preservation development, and they are following up. They're involved in meetings. They're targeting each county and making sure we all understand how to move forward. And this is a really nice level of service that I think is maybe a result of kind of the ongoing investigation and accountability.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Greg, I was just going to add to what Nan said there, and I've noticed a big change in managing our adult and family services. They're reaching out, and we actually have monthly meetings set up now so that we can touch base and really get a good grip on how we can work together for that cross funding, because it's so crucial right now at the state level. And when I'm about to talk about Family First here, and just part of what we're doing with Family First is to have those better connections, especially with behavioral health, so that when we're serving families, that they can come on board with us and really help us understand and help families understand the different programs that are available and funding sources to help families get what they need. So yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because it's something I've I'm thinking that it's going to continue to improve and really help us serve families.
Right, great.
So
Thank you all.
To transition into the Family First Prevention Services Act. So I've given you guys updates over time on the implementation of this federal legislation. Really important and how we fund child welfare services. An emphasis is really on providing those quality prevention services for families that are local. And so that it helps prevent them from entering the child welfare system. And so right now, Colorado has just come up with their third version of a prevention plan to provide to the federal government. And the reason why there's a third version going to the federal government is that there is a few sticking points that the state of Colorado had to work through. And mainly the main one is it's kind of a big deal. It's how we define who's eligible for these federal funds. So if we're providing what they, consider to be evidence-based practices, the federal government's gonna reimburse the state at 50 cents a dollar for every service that we're providing in that way. And then we also know that it's been designated as one of those evidence-based services. So we're really hoping to improve some outcomes there. The thing with Colorado is we've tried to expand that candidacy to include our prevention clients. So that means that we're talking about families that don't have a child welfare involvement. And the federal government has defined candidacy as a child that is in imminent risk of being placed out of the home. And so we haven't really been able to articulate to the federal government why that this is so important to include prevention families, even if we aren't at that open case of a child welfare and at imminent risk for placing them out of the home. We think that they should be eligible for this fund if they've been identified by us and work with us. So that's one of the things we're working as a state to try to do. And locally, we're going to continue to try to work with our local mental health providers and our substance abuse providers so that they are able to implement and provide some of those services that are considered evidence-based and get that reimbursement. So, we're doing a good job, I feel like, with that. And most recently, we now have a new program available, and it's called a high fidelity wraparound program. And so we're able to serve 4 or 5 families at a time with a really intensive model that we're getting a lot of support from the state. And we think it's going to be, in line with Family First, as it's being considered right now for one of those services to be reimbursed at 50 cents to the dollar. So some good things are happening. It's just a process. And we're hopeful that Colorado can eventually expand that candidacy definition to include those families that don't have a child welfare case. And so we're going to continue to support that. And that's something I thought might be important for you all to know. So I'm wondering if there's any question about the Family First or anything I just explained there.
I'm not seeing any.
Okay. I do have our next bullet point, so I'll move on to that one and quickly explain here. So for adult protection, Pickens County has agreed to work with the state in trying to implement a new program and how we respond to some of our adult protection cases. And so right now there's a little bit of a delay in us trying to change some of the rules and implement a new practice. Really, I think that the state wasn't ready to have the conversations with the counties on how this would actually be operationalized. And so we're really looking at trying to change our process so we're not investigating and claiming self-neglect on people. We're trying to look at these low to moderate risk cases with adults in a way that is more supportive and less investigative. And so we're going to work with the state to do that. It's just kind of being put on hold once they can kind of figure out the rules that they want to clarify before we have the conversation is just my understanding on where things are at. So I'll continue to provide updates on that, but thought I would ask if there's any questions on that one.
All right, Matt, I am not seeing any.
Thanks.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Chad.
Okay, hi everyone, thanks. I'm Chad Fedowitz, I'm the manager of senior services. And here I just want to talk very briefly about House Bill 221035, which Commissioner Childs is probably rather aware of. This is a bill that's introducing to update the Older Coloradans Act, which I don't think has been updated in many, many years. Primarily, the update constitutes about 4 different big topics. It currently examines the current makeup of the Colorado Commission on Aging, which I currently serve as the vice chair of, and expands that membership slightly, and also embeds different types of subject matter experts to be seated upon that commission. It creates a little more of a funnel of communication between different state agencies and on the Commission on Aging as far as initiatives and programs related to aging at either state or regional levels. It creates a kind of interagency advisory committee within the state government that will act as an advisory committee to the commission to assist in the implementation of some of the commission's ideas or recommendations to the State Unit on Aging and thus the governor's office. And also embeds some of the work of Lifelong Colorado, which is the state version of age-friendly communities within the state statute, to really push along the initiative throughout the state around examining local efforts around aging and age kind of supportive services, both in the sense of opportunities and challenges that are present in different communities around the state. That's at a pretty high level, since Commissioner Childs is rather intimately aware of this. If I'm missing anything, Steve, I rely on your expertise.
Steve, did you? Yeah, go ahead, Steve, if you want to add something.
Yeah, I have probably at least 3 meetings a month where we're talking about this at this time, if not more meetings per month. But what this means is this will be the end of SAPCA. A bill has been introduced to sunset the SAPCA board by 2 of the sponsors of the Modernization Act, or sponsors of the sunsetting of SAPCA, which is following the state. The state has a commission which looks at what things need to be sunsetted or extended every year. So I started on SAPCA in 2015, and as of September 1st, it will be the end of it. So I will have had a 7-year run on SAPCA at that point, and kind of, it's a kind of a bittersweet end, but I mean, everybody on SAPCA, I think, is excited about the new CCOA because it takes forward some of the good things from SAPCA and I think improves the CCOA. Also, the CCOA members, their terms end the last day of August, and the new CCOA will begin their job on September 1st in this next fall. So exciting things to look forward to in that, I think, Chad.
Okay, any other questions from the board?
I was just going to say thanks for your service, Steve. Amazing to have a Pitkin County representative on that aging task force for so long. Great.
Well, Steve has
Sorry,
definitely aged well with the aging task force.
Yes.
We're proud of him.
I'm feeling my age, I think.
Are you the youngest one on that group, Steve?
Are you the youngest in the group?
What's that?
Are you the youngest person in the group, Patty asked?
Oh, no, no, I'm one of the older ones, but I don't think I am the oldest in the SETCA group.
Nice diversity on that group.
Yeah.
Right? Age diversity. So thank you. We've participated in legislation of with varying energies over the past few years, and just want you all to know that we're watching legislation. Generally, as a small county, we don't get too involved in it unless something's not being represented. One of our issues is not being represented. But if there's a specific bill that you want us to follow, or we find one that we think you all need to attend to, we will bring that forward even before our next quarterly meeting.
Okay, where are we moving to now, Nan?
So now we just want to talk.
Wait,
Pat,
Kelly's waving at me, sorry.
Thanks. I'm the Health and Human Services Board rep at CCI. So I'm wondering, should I connect Lindsay with you about questions on bills?
Yeah.
All right, that's what I wanted to know. Thanks.
Yes, Lindsay will represent and help take them forward. We have representatives on the CHSDA Legislative Committee, and we get weekly updates on the CHSDA positions. And then we're involved if CCI gets involved in sharing a position with CHSDA. But you would be working with Lindsay on that moving forward. Okay, thank you. So what we wanted to do, Patty, is talk briefly about some initiatives. I see that it's 1:47, and we want Sam to have time to talk about the cliff effect. So I think if we do quick initiative summaries, and then we'll move into the cliff effect, and you all have the data on annual if we don't get to that by the end of the meeting. It's not mandatory.
Perfect, Nan, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So Lindsay, are you starting with a strategic plan update?
Yeah, so I will give an update on our strategic plan, and we have 4 updates for initiatives for you all. So instead of having the PowerPoint up, I'm just going to keep us together in this way, so we're not just staring at that screen. So as you may know, we did a human services strategic plan in the last quarter of 2020, and we had our deliverables set for the beginning of 2021, and so we're now 1 year into the plan. And really the intention was for us to assess our community, our partners, stakeholders, internal organization as well, to get data and input to inform what our priority areas are for different goals for the division. And what we came up with are 4 main domain areas. The first one is food security, second one housing stability, third one is safety, and the fourth is financial stability. So what you can expect to see from us, you may have remembered when we sent out a survey back in 2020, we're going to be sending out another survey to come out just to get a pulse on how we're doing on the plan. Also understand from community partners anything that they may be doing that may be contributing to this overall plan. And really the intention of gathering stakeholder input on this is to help us determine the scope of work that's happening at the community level, and then to further inform any resources or collaborative partnerships and budget requests over the next couple, especially in this next year. So that's my quick overview of the strategic plan, but just wanted to make sure we got it in here today. The next one is the Emma Food Hub.
All right, so I know we've briefly spoken about the Emma Food Hub in the past, and I'll keep this short. The reason for this idea around a food hub in the Mid-Valley area comes from, we've got new data from Hunger Free Colorado that 33% of Coloradans are impacted by food insecurity right now in Colorado. A lot of it is a result of the pandemic, personally, I think that a lot of it's just playing catch up to what's been an issue that's kind of been under the surface for quite a long time. And you know, the impacts are incredible. I mean, we talk about physical, mental, there's behavioral health costs, decreased community safety, fiscal and economic repercussions of high levels of food insecurity. And you know, this can be most prominently felt within our some of our communities who aren't receiving the support that they need, like low-income children, families, older adults. And another aspect of this that we're focusing on in Pitkin County, which is particularly prevalent in resort regions, is acute food insecurity, meaning short but intense periods of food insecurity caused by things like layoffs or off seasons. So this issue's been discussed for quite some time now, and one of the main areas that came up was this need for increased infrastructure around food distribution. All of our partners felt that there's issues with long distances, inability to provide regular services because of that distance. So for quite some time, we talked about a potential food warehousing center somewhere between, you know, Elgibel and Aspen. And as a group, we looked at a number of different locations. We found that primarily they were either too expensive or they weren't safe for food warehousing. And during the pandemic, we convened a group of partners, including Lift Up, Food Bank of the Rockies, Aspen Family Connections, and others, focused on food distribution during the pandemic. And once that system had been put in place, there were additional discussions around how can we bring about this food warehousing option. And what came up was an idea to utilize the Emma Mercantile buildings as a possible food hub for the region. And we put together a proposal for that and brought it to Open Space and Trails. They provided with some assistance there. And last week we presented to the Emma Townsite Steering Committee, who provided us with feedback, and we are working on answering those questions. And Open Space, along with Human Services and some of our partners, will be bringing that to the Open Space and Trails Board and the BOCC in March for consideration and input as to the feasibility of this project. There's a lot of ideas around how it can be utilized, but predominantly providing that infrastructure to allow for less frequent supply trips to the area and the ability for our food distributors to be able to access that much more easily than driving all the way down to Rifle to resupply and do distributions in our neighborhoods where the need is high.
So this comes to the board on March 1st. And mainly we just wanted you to have a heads up that the project is coming. Not so much a discussion on the concept right now, as just an awareness that we're working with Open Space and Trails and the Emma Caucus and food partners.
Great.
Thank you.
Sounds like a perfect location for a mercantile. And an old mercantile.
Except for access.
Yeah, well, it's only a few cars. It's not like it's a drive-in,
Luckily,
drive-out grocery
there's lots
store.
of opportunity to talk about it at the March meeting. And we're so excited to be working with Open Space. Just want to say what a privilege it is to be aligned with them on some ideas.
Great. Any other questions from the board on that? I'm not seeing any so far. Thanks. Thanks, Sam. Okay.
Sam, the Financial Empowerment Center.
All right, great, yeah, so another initiative that dovetails well with our strategic plan is the regional formation of a Financial Empowerment Center. We're working with Garfield, Eagle, and ourselves, as well as a large list of partners who are listed in the memo, to create what's called a Financial Empowerment Center for the region, the Parachute to Aspen region. And the primary purpose of this is to create opportunities for folks to receive financial counseling to help them achieve financial stability. The first step in this project was for us to attend the the FEC, they're calling it Financial Empowerment Center Academy, which was working with a group out of New York who has helped other communities throughout the country implement these financial empowerment centers. And have had a lot of success. So we attended that training last week. We got a lot of great resources. They're going to provide ongoing support as we develop a plan for launching this program. Garfield County was nice enough to sign on as really the sponsor, as they are kind of the population hub in the region that we're talking about. But this will be a group effort involving a lot of partners moving forward to create something that's going to be most responsive to the needs of the folks in the region.
You all might remember that I think we wrote a letter supporting this legislation last year. And so a new office of financial empowerment is being designated in the Attorney General's office. And Barbara Freeman from La Medici is really an amazing advocate and spearhead for ours being the first rural and regional financial empowerment center where people will actually get debt management counseling. And we're really excited about it as the beginning of starting to address some of the resiliency issues in our community and the cost of living.
Francie has a question.
Well, actually, I just wanted to make a comment that I've been talking with Barbara, and she's doing, at La Medici, she's doing this partnership program. So there's another restaurant involved too. I forget which one it is, but so if somebody who's enrolled in the La Medici program brings in a friend, they can both come to Fat Belly Burgers and get free free fries or free ice cream. And I don't know how many people have actually taken them up on that and how this is working, but I hope that other people in the community will start supporting La Medici in however they can, because it's a pretty amazing thing. Barbara is incredible.
And Fat Belly's has really good ice cream.
And burgers and fries.
Yeah.
Yeah, Barbara Freeman is a fantastic partner at La Medici, and we are so lucky. She spearheaded this legislation along with I want to say Keystone something, but it's not that. I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, very exciting for us to move forward on that, and Sam will continue to be our lead, and we will do everything we can to make sure that within a year we're looking at a financial empowerment center for the Tri-County region.
So great.
It's great. Great to hear. Great, Sam. Thank you.
So the last update is really around the homeless services that we've been involved in. So just a reminder that Pickens County was successful bringing in over $850,000, but to help us build homeless services during COVID. $610,000 was from DOLA and and HUD dollars through the Department of Local Affairs. We completed all of our obligations to that grant by December 31st and have successfully transitioned those services to Recovery Resources. They are the nonprofit that provide our detox, our pretrial services, our useful public services, and they are now wanting to take on building the concept of resiliency for those who are unsheltered. So we closed the Safe Outdoor Space on November 1st, and then transitioned all the services over. We will continue to have one family we're paying rent for in Routt County, and DOLA reimbursed us for that expenditure. But we're committed in their lease until April. And want to thank Audrey, who's done an exceptional job for us drawing those dollars down. We are fully drawn. I'm writing a final report before I go, and we're feeling, that we had tremendous success building up our case management services, our data collection services, emergency shelter, and rapid housing. Today, I believe we have 14 people in emergency shelter and 16 in rapid rehousing. Rapid rehousing is where they're in a lease and they're housed in an apartment. Emergency shelter, we had started a shelter at the chapel with Recovery Resources, in November, on November 1st, but we found with the Omicron spread, it was just really difficult to have people in congregate shelter. So we Recovery Resources successfully placed everyone in hotels, and that's where they remain now during this extreme weather winter shelter need. And I wanted to make sure that you all know that the Aspen Homeless Shelter has decided to close the day center. It's unclear if they are folding as a board or if they're going to remain involved as a sort of foundation arm to raise money for homeless services. They just pretty much reported through a letter from their board chair that the whole housing system has been built so successfully that they're really not equipped as a board to take it into the next level of care, but they do want to support what's happening. So that's exciting. There are conversations about how to best use the space of the Human Services building where the homeless shelter is. We've maintained as staff that a day center is an essential community service. We need a place for people to go who have no place to go. People who are in transition, people who are newly sober, people who can't find housing. So there are people working right now on how best to make a proposal on how best to use the day center space, whether it's more about food distribution or coaching or resources, linkages to mental health. And we will be considering how to use that space, possibly considering an RFP and asking people to apply for with their ideas on how to use the space. So I just wanted to make sure you all know, I'm sure you've heard rumors about things that are happening. And at the Housing Stability Coalition meeting last week, people were very nervous about potentially a loss of service to our most vulnerable, but I really feel that there are groups that are actively determining the best use of the space, and that I'm hoping that we see very little disruption of services.
And Ann, I think that's really an important issue, because I've been approached by others who would like it to turn back into a childcare space, but I had not really heard the rumblings that it was going to close as the day shelter space, which I thought was used a lot, as you said, for a lot of resources, a gathering place, a place to find their benefits, for follow-up, for showers, for mutual support, etc. So it's a tough call. We have so many needs, but it'll be interesting to follow. So please keep the board up to speed and up to date on that. Yeah. So that we can.
Definitely.
Yeah, that would
Lindsay
be great.
will do that. And just a reminder that it was a daycare center or childcare center or early childhood center, whichever is the right language, where my daughter went. But when Little Feet folded, we had quite a public conversation about the best use of space. At that time, and I would say it probably still applies today, given the clientele that comes to our building, the co-occurring childcare and mental health center concepts might be at odds with each other. So just that was where the board stood about 12 or 14 years ago, that children were better off in another setting besides a mental health center. So, and this is, primarily the set of services that we're providing here. So just keep that in mind as you're moving forward. I'm saying that for Lindsay too, because she doesn't know the history of that.
Yeah, I was part of that when it first became a child care facility, mostly for use with hospital employees because of the location. And there's definitely, not only do I think you have to be concerned about the mix of uses in that space, but also I think there's some regulatory issues that would possibly preclude that. So something for us just to keep, just to be informed of. Thanks, Nan.
Yeah, thank you. So without other questions, we're going to move to Sam describing what the cliff effect is, which is really a perfect segue from everything we've been discussing here. And we'll turn it over to Sam. You might want the PowerPoint again.
Thanks. And Lindsay, would you actually mind going to the next slide? I think it probably makes more sense to start here. So thanks, Nan. Like Nan mentioned, Patty had asked a couple meetings ago for some information on the cliff effect and how it impacts folks here in Pitkin County. So I think the first thing that's important to recognize is what is the cliff effect. It refers to the time when a household that has been receiving public assistance benefits sees an increase in income, which is obviously hoped for. However, it eventually puts them over income for the program limits, which results in a decrease in benefits, which can be quite substantial, especially when we're talking about Medicaid, which is providing, the equivalent to health insurance, and the Child Care Assistance Program, which is helping pay for child care. Obviously, those needs don't disappear when the benefits go away. So what we're really seeing is these folks who've been receiving support to help them become self-sufficient, all of a sudden get this negative impact to their support system, while also still being fairly far below what we're calling the self-sufficiency standard or living wage. So it's really a two-part here that we're looking at, is the impact of that cliff effect on our households, as well as living below that self-sufficiency standard. So when we're looking at these charts here, the top one is basically just our current caseload for the Economic Assistance Program. As you can see, if we exclude the possibility of duplication between SNAP and some of the lower income limit programs like the Old Age Pension and Colorado Works and A&D, we can still safely say that there's approximately 2,000 individuals in Pitkin County who are receiving some form of public assistance benefits to help support their household. That comes out to roughly 11% of our population. And then when we talk about the living wage or the self-sufficiency standard, there's kind of two groups that have worked on this. MIT came out with these numbers that we're seeing here, which when we looked at the previous numbers from 2019 through the Colorado Center on Law and Policy around Colorado's specific self-sufficiency standard, they seem to be pretty close. So I thought the comparison was good, and I liked that the MIT numbers focused on a less broad range of households. So it really was it was good for us to look at this and see, what goes into calculating this living wage. So as you can see here, they actually break it down by annual income, monthly income, the living wage, and then what the poverty level wage would be, which I think is really illuminating. Did we lose the PowerPoint?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
No worries.
Is that
over here?
Listen,
that table in our packet?
this is in our packet.
I missed it.
Well, it's all right. So some of the other costs that factor in, obviously, are housing. They have childcare on there, transport, taxes, all these things that factor into what makes up a living wage here in Pitkin County. And I checked it against inflation, and it seems to be fairly on. I think maybe with the housing, we're a little underestimated, also possibly around the medical, depending on whether you have insurance or not. But what we're looking at here is when we look at a household in Pitkin County with one adult and one child, the annual income to be self-sufficient or just meet the living wage is $76,000. So that's pretty high. And I think, Lindsay, if we can go back to the previous slide, what we can see on the, previous slide. So there we go. One more. There we go. So I think that what I looked at here when I was putting this information together was I wanted to show the difference between where we see people drop off of public assistance and the space between that and where they would technically be considered self-sufficient. So the orange line in each of these charts that you see is the living wage based on those charts we were looking at. And each of the columns, the blue columns, represents the income limits for that household size for these various public assistance programs. So when we're looking at, we already mentioned one child and one adult, and that's $76,000 a year income limit. When these households drop off of any medical assistance and any child care assistance, they're still $2,500 below what would be considered a living wage. So we, in addition to the 11% of our population who are receiving public assistance benefits, which are represented by these blue columns, we have all of the households, and we don't know what that number is, who are living in this space between that, you know, cliff effect and self-sufficiency. So I think what this really demonstrates is how serious this issue is, and how these state and federal programs don't meet the need of our community. So a lot of these initiatives that we're taking on, food security, financial empowerment, housing stability, you know, increasing childcare access, that is where we need to focus to really help those folks who fall in this area between dropping off benefits and being what would be considered self-sufficient.
Interesting.
Thank you, Sam. Go ahead and ask questions. There's a lot of information here.
Yeah, do I see any of the board members who, Kelly, please.
Yeah, just some reactions. I mean, this is so just illuminating. It also really, I think, points to, you know, the need is really related to families in our community, less than, I think, working adults who don't have children, it seems, as one of my takeaways. Correct me if I'm leaving with a misinterpretation. Though I do see this bottom graph here, there's still that big gap. And I wonder if we would be able to work with the demographer's office to figure out how much of that population is here, you know, to just get a better number around that. And then finally, I also, this is helpful to keep in mind, and I think when APSHA undertakes its work to look at the affordability standard for housing, that we really should be looking at this information as part of that bigger picture. Because I will say, sort of, anecdotally, we hear information of like, oh, well, people in APSHA are only spending 15% of their income on, you know, their housing category. And while that may be true in some instances, it doesn't mean that people are flush with cash that in their lives that they are, you know, hitting this livability standard, or this living wage standard. So it's just a good reminder to sort of be cautious about when we look at just a slice of numbers rather than the whole picture, to understand like the true economic reality of the families living here. So thanks. I really appreciate this, Sam. And I will, please, if you could, I know the information is in our packet, but I'd love to have these slides as well. Thank you.
Nan, please.
Thanks. I just raised my hand, now I have to lower it. I mean, it's so illuminating, this, and the self-sufficiency standard, which the Center for Law and Policy is going to come out with, they say by March, an updated one, really explains to you that they include transportation, food, medical costs, taxes, housing, and some other miscellaneous in their overall livability. I think, you know, I just want to encourage that what this suggests to me is that we really need to look at how we're subsidizing living in Pickens County. It looks like housing just takes their slice, transportation takes their slice. We've been focused on healthcare access and Mountain Family Health Center, which Lindsay, you all will review in a couple of weeks there, or next week. Like, if to look at it all together to make sure that this is a livable community. And, you know, we're likely looking at 25% of our population living below that, if not higher, 30 to 40%. That's a significant number. So, yeah, there's lots of opportunity here to use and consider this information in a sort of a multi-system approach to support families and individuals.
Well, Nan, and I think with inflation and the reevaluation, just the cost of food, and just basic fundamentals of living, I mean, from paper towels to shampoo, everything has gone up so much that the hit's going to be even greater, I think, with the Law and Policy Center coming out with some new information. I think we're all feeling it in all of our pockets, and I know that those who have been living barely paycheck to paycheck, if not lower, are really feeling it. And how are we going to address that and deal with it for, it's a growing population in need. And I think Kelly's idea of getting in touch with state demographer to see if they can help us with more data, they're always willing, they always have great information, and they're always willing to help us. So that's a good resource, I think, for us to always be able to turn to. And if anybody on staff has an issue or has a concern as to how to get in touch with the right people, please let us know. The board has a good relationship with the state demographer herself, so please, we're more than willing to help you guys out. Any other questions from the board? This was great information. Thank you, Sam. All right. Next.
Okay, I know that you all are planning a break at 2:25, so I'm gonna invite the program managers to do high-level summaries if you feel like you have time. So Matt, you're the first with Adult and Family Services.
Yeah, I don't know, Lindsay, if we have the charts, but we just have some data, and I just wanted to give a little bit of information on the referral and case numbers for our different programs. So within adult protection, like a lot of other counties across the state, we did see a reduction in the amount of reports we were receiving. And so this first graph just shows number of reports in the red, and then the cases that we actually opened up in the blue. On the right side, it shows the number of care navigation cases by year. And care navigation is a case management program that we use for adults over the age of 60 that aren't necessarily involved with adult protection or don't meet that criteria. So we're still serving a large group of people in this program, and that's what that graph represents. And I anticipate that care navigation numbers are going to continue to rise by year. Lindsay, you can go to the next one. And this is just going into the child welfare data here. So again, the red are the number of referrals or reports we receive of child abuse and neglect each year in Pitkin County. Huge drop off. We saw, I think, at some point it was over a 70% reduction in the amount of reports we were receiving. Obviously, this had a lot to do with children being out of school for a little while, not as many going to the child care, and just not as many mandated reporters being involved. And so now into this year, we're finally starting to see the increase come back. And this past month, we've really gotten back up to where our numbers were pre-pandemic. And then on the right, real quick, there's just a pie chart that shows how we've really grown using the prevention services. So instead of having a family involved with an open child welfare case, we're actually serving more outside of that. And there's less stigma and there's more engagement when we're able to do that. So that's a good indicator for us. That's all I had, unless there's any questions.
Am I seeing any questions from the board?
I guess I have one.
Yeah, go ahead, Francie.
Yeah, I guess my question, Matt, would be that in 2020, when the numbers dropped so much, I'm assuming that doesn't mean that incidences dropped. It's just that people were more isolated and less likely to do referrals and reach out?
That's the assumption that we and other professionals across the state have made. One of the things we did recognize is a lot of the reports we did receive had more complex needs. So you'll see we actually, had a higher percentage that we accepted for assessment because the ones we did get were ones that were pretty complex. So the workload didn't drop a ton, but those amount of reports did, which then gives us less of an opportunity to work with families in that prevention realm if
Okay.
we don't get reports.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Steve, please. See, sometimes they raise their hand.
Matt, you're comparing our rate of confirmed cases of child abuse or neglect with Eagle and Garfield, and I cannot find what the rate is for Pitkin County. It says it's one of the lowest, but I can't see a number. So Eagles is 3.6 per thousand, Garfield's 5.7 per thousand.
Yeah, so sorry if that wasn't available there. It's 1.9, I believe, was the rate in Pitkin. And so I think 1.7 or 1.9, if I remember right. But I think the idea I was trying to point out there is, yeah, we do see lower rates as far as confirmed abuse and neglect here. There could be a lot of variables on why that is. We'd like to think we have a very strong school resource center with Aspen Family Connections. And then in combination of our prevention services that we offer, we're thinking we're reducing that number just by being able to provide more of that. And so, you know, hopefully that's something that we'll be able to look into a little bit more to try to better understand. But I don't know if that answers your question or not, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
Thanks.
Okay. Dan, we still have a
Okay.
couple of minutes.
Yeah, we can do this fast, Chad.
Sure. This is just highlighting nutrition, particularly for senior services. We're right on kind of pace where we've been historically. And the last year, even with the opening and closing to the public multiple times, we've served now 2 years in a row the most meals we've ever served in the history of our department. So I hope and somewhat anticipate that trend to continue as we really increase our outreach efforts around our nutrition program particularly, but really all of our programs in general.
Thank you, Chad. Maybe, Lindsay, since Sam talked about EA, why don't we skip this slide and just see, would love if there's, you know, it's a privilege for me to have my last Board of Social Services meeting and to have you all be so interested in our business. I just want to thank you. We, of course, are passionate, but we just so appreciate your support. And just wondering if, as you all move forward, is there anything different you would like in the Board of Social Services presentation so that Lindsay, Matt, Sam, and Chad can be more purposeful to meet your needs?
Greg, I see you have a hand up.
Great, I'll go first. First of all, thanks, Nan. It is, you give me such a great level of comfort and confidence as you have for so many years. And I also know you're leaving this department in great hands with Lindsay and her team. Lindsay, welcome. I know you'll fill the big shoes well, and this will go great. You know what I was thinking as we were looking at all this? I was trying not to let it get too abstract. There are a lot of huge question marks here for me. And I can't help but look at it and say, how are people able to even function at all here if the gaps are so huge, if the cliff is so huge? How are people able to make it here, and are they making it at all? And so I guess what I'd like to see, and I don't even know if you all can produce this, but I'd love to start attaching faces. I'd like to start seeing and hearing stories. And this probably comes from my documentary film and journalistic background, but I want to see the human face of this. The numbers are kind of shocking, and it's hard to believe it. Really, you look at it and think, wow, how is it possible that anybody could even make a go of it here? So I guess it would help me, and it would help the community as well to get behind this if we could start putting faces on the numbers. Just as a thought, and I don't even know how quite yet that we would do that, but I'd love to talk to you all about it at some point if you need me to.
I love that idea, Greg.
Thank you. Great idea.
All right, Steve has a hand up.
Oh, just to comment on that idea, Greg, I would think that the human faces would have to volunteer to tell their story, because it's their stories, it's confidential information. But I'm thinking of the woman who's running the recovery. She is a person in recovery herself, and she is running a recovery program in the Roaring Fork Valley. There's an article about her in the newspaper now. But she volunteered to, she put her story out there voluntarily. So there's a big difference if someone's on hard times or struggling. To be able to open up and share their story is amazing. So to get back to the subject of human services, man, it wasn't all that long ago. You were the director of health and human services. And Lindsay can breathe a sigh of relief that we have separated the departments, and because Nan really had big shoes to fill at that time.
I'm ready to get back to work.
Ready to what?
Yeah, I don't know if you know that from 99 to 2007, I was the Health and Human Services and Community Relations Director.
I do remember that, Nan, because I was here with you during that time frame.
Yep, got that department started.
So
Yeah,
Lindsay,
so,
we're
Nan,
not, let Lindsay know
we
we're not
can't-
thinking about doing that, Lindsay, so.
Yeah, just huge kudos to you, Nan, for the job you've done, and we're also thankful for what you have done. I really love your department's presentations, because Nan, you don't do all the talking. You let each of your staff people tell their story and their part, and they're also competent and do such a good job explaining. We very rarely have questions about what's being explained, because it's been a really, I think, a good system, and the staff is so competent and able to explain their stories very well. So I would keep doing it pretty much the same after Nan leaves.
Thank you, Steve. The team is extraordinary. The technical expertise that you see in this room is extraordinary. We're so lucky. And I just want to say that at the Housing Stability Coalition meetings, if you come, we have people doing testimonials at the beginning of every meeting, and it makes a huge difference for the motivation of that coalition to see real people who have been housed, whose lives are changing. So we understand that, and we will work on telling more stories.
And Nan, I want to add to what you said about the technical experience. You have a great deal of human experience in this room. So that is truly, the perfect factor when you have the technical and the human aspect brought together in your staff that you have created in that department. So we truly appreciate that. Is there any other board members who would like to say anything to Nan before we close Nan's last social services meeting with us? Not her last meeting with us, because I think Nan will be present next week. Nan, I heard a rumor, though, that you're going to take up trumpet lessons when you retire. Is that correct?
Yeah. Dick is tired of playing at the memorial, so I'm going to play.
Oh, we're definitely coming to that one, Nan. I see that Kelly had her hand up.
Veterans memorials for over 25 years.
Yeah.
And he will continue that, and we will be good partners and stewards in the community.
Okay.
So, Nan, you should take up bagpipes. You could be a piper at the memorials.
I think she's going to be more the cheerleader. Kelly, please go ahead.
Yeah, I won't say a lot, but I just want to thank you, Nan. You are a personal hero to me. I think about you and your approach, and I try to emulate that in my own life. And so I'm just grateful to know you. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else wishing to speak?
I'll save mine for next week.
Francie's going to save hers for next week. Nan, I'm so sorry. I will, on the 23rd is my mother's 97th birthday. So I will be
exciting.
celebrating my mother's birthday with my family in California. So therefore, we do not need to call for a motion to adjourn, but I'm going to call for it anyway. I need a motion to adjourn,
You
please.
got it.
I got a motion
So
from
moved.
Francie. I've got a second, I think, from Greg. Again, Nan, our most heartfelt thanks to everything you've done. It's been 30 years.
Almost 31, but who's counting?
Yeah, well, definitely 31 years. We're going to give you credit for that last year. All right, all those in
Right.
favor to adjourn, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, we are going to take a 15-minute break for the Board of Commissioners. Bye, Audrey.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
Thank
Chad.
you. Good to see you.
Okay, 30-minute break, guys. 15-minute break, guys.
Okay. Patty, after future agendas, I'm gonna pop out, Rich is gonna pop in, we're doing a meeting with Lance.
Oh, okay, okay. That's- Welcome back. This is Board of County Commissioners work session. Today is Tuesday, February the 15th. I hope everyone had a wonderful Valentine's Day. As you know, I did because my granddaughter turned 5 yesterday. I'm a big 5-year-old, right, Kelly? We have our 5-year-olds now. So next on our agenda is a review of future agenda calendars. John.
Yeah, thanks, Patty. I have a couple of things to run by the board. First, in the very, very near future, I just wanted to let you know, after future agendas, I'm going to step away for another meeting, and Rich is going to join you.
Okay.
And then the clerk and recorder position did close, and so we have 4 applicants. I think staff is going to recommend that the board go ahead and interview all 4. There are some significant differences in background and experience for the board to consider. I wanted to get some feedback from the board as far as how you would like to do that. Right now, we have blocked out the morning of March 8th for the board to do those interviews. That would be during a regular work session time that's scheduled. We've blocked out 10 to 12. We could certainly extend that. That only gives 30-minute blocks really for each candidate. The board may want some more time. Alternatively,
You said we had 5 interviews.
it's 4. I miscounted.
I'm like missing a half an hour there.
Yeah, if the board would like more time, we could also look at posting another meeting later that week. I believe that is an off week for regular meetings. We could look at that Wednesday. We don't want to push it much past that week, though, at this point.
No, because Janice is looking at April 1st.
April 1st.
With some hang-around time after that to help us with transition.
Correct.
So Francie will be recusing.
That's correct.
So what would the board like to do? Do you want to do the morning of the 8th, which is a Tuesday work session day? Or do you want to schedule it for the following day on the Wednesday? Greg, please.
Either day's fine for me. I guess, if somebody asked me to interview a clerk and recorder candidates, I'd really need to be briefed in advance. I don't know if I need a half hour because I don't think I can fill a half hour because I simply just don't know enough. So I would be asking staff to give us some criteria, whether it's Melissa coming in or you, John. I'm not ready to do this. So March 8th is great, or 9th, whatever you all decide. But I'm gonna need some more context to be conducting this interview.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll be more pride than I think, but that's how I'm feeling right now.
Sure.
Well, and the 9th, John, we do have a regular board meeting that day.
Oh, yes, you do. I was saying the morning of the 9th. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm kind of going towards the morning of the 8th with a half an hour myself.
Okay.
And I agree with Greg that if somebody could give us, it's a different interview. I don't think any of us I've never done a.
Yeah, so if I could just thank you for bringing that up. So we are preparing the applicant information for the board. It'll be part of a public packet. So we have to do some redaction of certain personal information and such like we do with your board interviews. In addition to that, we are preparing some guidelines for you, suggested questions, and then just some bullet points on things you aren't allowed to ask in some cases in a hiring process. So we'll certainly provide some of that background for you.
That would be great. I see Steve and then Kelly.
I would agree that a half an hour should be sufficient. I'm right where Greg is. The kind of questions I would ask would be just to ask leading questions to try to see how the person would answer them, what their character is like, how how they hold themselves in, in the hot seat kind of would be the kind of questions. But one specific to how to be the best clerk and recorder, I'm like Greg, I would want some guidance on that.
Okay. So that Tuesday works for you, works for Greg. Kelly?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd prefer not to do Wednesday. We have short-term rental ordinance and several land use items that day. So I'd rather come into those fresh.
Okay. So let's look at scheduling this for the 8th.
Okay, we'll schedule that for the 8th, and then I assume the board will want us to schedule some time for you to debrief those interviews and give direction back also.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We'll have to work on that because I know we do want to get this moved forward.
We will provide a tool similar to what you've used in the past when you've had a number of applicants for a limited number of positions so that you can give some individual feedback, and then we can bring that back for decision making.
And what else do you have, John?
Thank you, Patty. So the other thing I'd note is that on February 22nd, we are scheduling a special meeting. And I just want to note this is in response to the Board of Health decision to sunset the public health order at 12 a.m. On the 22nd. The board still has an outstanding emergency declaration that is in place until the board rescinds it. We adopted that emergency declaration with the first public health order. I believe it was March 12th, 2020. So we are coming up on 2 years. And so we are proposing to tie sunsetting our emergency declaration with the sunsetting of the public health order.
So you scheduled that for 11 o'clock on the 22nd?
11 o'clock on the 22nd.
For just 10 minutes?
So it'll be, we can do longer. I don't think it'll take a whole lot of time.
You know, it's fine with me.
So
Francie, you'll be in charge. I think we're good.
I would love to read that.
yeah,
Before you rescind it.
and then connected with that,
That's what I meant.
we are finalizing just kind of our next phase of reopening and building instructions. In fact, I've been watching it get edited live while we've been in this meeting, but we'll largely comply, as I talked about last time, with recommending masking, giving our incidence rates in all county facilities, but it will be a choice. With the exception of the Health and Human Services building, the Schultz building, because of the vulnerable population served there, the airport, which is still operating under a federal mandate for indoor masking, and of course RAFTA will also still require masks on the buses pursuant to that same federal mandate, and we'll be asking for grace and understanding because people do not know why somebody might or might not be wearing a mask, and we'll be looking for that understanding.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Any other items from the board for future agendas? Okay, and I did send out that memo that our agenda meeting will be Francie and I and John Ely. So I've given the rest of the staff that afternoon off, John. That means you can.
I appreciate that.
And closer to noon would be better for me.
That's okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah. I just have to be a block away at 2.
Okay.
So if you John want to go on for the next 5 hours, it's fine with me.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right,
I'll let
and
John
Rich
know.
has joined, so I'm gonna leave you in his capable hands and join that other
All right. Hi,
meeting.
Rich.
Thank you.
Nice to see you again. I promise I won't skip over you today. So we are done with our upcoming board agendas, and we're going to move into board membership reports. I'll start off really quickly. ACRA is moving along. They're paying close attention to the short-term rental issues and the moratorium on the city side. Other than that, there's really nothing to report. when I know more about what the plans are for summer events, I'll make sure the board it knows. Northwest COG is also, this is kind of the easy, smooth time of year. I'm hoping that the Northwest COG Economic Development, I'm hoping that we will have, before COVID, Johnny, you okay? Before COVID, we were doing a economic development conference, usually over in Silverthorne, in the spring. I don't know if we're going to be able to pull that off. It's always a great event, and I will let the board know if that's planned. Usually some great topics and great speakers, focusing on regional issues that we all seem to have in common. The Intermountain TPR, we're kind of in a holding stage, with more money coming through, again, for roads through the state. Brian Pettit and Dave Pedinchek and I have been conferring on projects, and right now, and Greg, I don't know if I mentioned this to you. This is probably not a TPR funding issue, but I brought it up the last time I met with Dave and Brian about wildlife crossings, and they think we might be able to go through this state, a different state fund for those solar paneled flashing light things. Trying to do overpasses or underpasses is a huge undertaking because of right-of-ways, easements, utilities. But at least we can get those flashing, and it's a highway safety issue. So I have Brian and Dave looking into that because I know that was a great concern for all of us after the horrible death of 10 or more elk at one time down on Lower Highway 82. So Greg, I did follow up on that for you. And for me, that's it. Francie, I'm going to let you go.
Okay, CCI, the first meeting, the Land Use and Natural Resources Steering Committee was mostly about wildfire mitigation. Most of it was readily passed. But there was one, let's see, it's House Bill 22-1104, and it was trying to create trails under power lines. And funding them, and there was quite a bit of talk about, well, these are going to be trails to nowhere because somebody might have private property next to a power line, but they don't want the trail on their property, but on the other side they might. So that one was something that we're going to follow, and it was quite a long discussion. And then there was funding for volunteer firefighters and that kind of thing. The hottest topic of the afternoon was the mountain lion and bobcat bill, which also included lynx, but lynx are, of course, already protected, so it wasn't necessary to put them there. So it was in committee. It was a law to prevent the hunting of bobcats and mountain lions. There was an article in the paper this morning about it, and I voted no on that, and so did pretty much everybody. And my feeling was that CPW knows exactly what they're doing. They have a lot of very professional people who know the numbers. And we live in the special management unit here. I don't know if you guys remember, it was about a year ago, we had the meeting in Glenwood about the increased harvest of mountain lions in this special management unit, which goes from about Vale to, I think it might be Palisade or Newcastle, and then up to Woody Creek. And so they did increase the harvest in this special management unit because of human, I don't know if they're conflicts, but interactions with lions. The whole rest of the western slope has the same harvest. I don't know what that is, but. And then the other two meetings I went to were electing officers, and particularly the public lands. And John Martin has been on that traveling committee for quite a long time, and he was voted in again. But then we also voted in, and then, let's see, Kelly, help me out. Is it Keith Baker who was voted the vice chair? Kelly?
Yeah, she said yes.
Okay. And then, so we had Hillary Cooper
Chaffee
and Warren
County.
Brown from Archuleta County. I don't have my notes with me, unfortunately. I left them at home, but, so, and then the other committee that I went to was only a very short, election for their chair and vice chair, and they didn't talk about any issues at all. I have heard quite a bit from Basalt Vista. I am on their mailing list now, Patty. Thank you for that.
Oh, good. I
Um,
was gonna make sure, I was gonna ask
and
you.
there's a couple issues developing there, but and West Elk Loop Scenic Byway Committee, I have 0 on that. So I'm done.
Perfect. So next we have Kelly.
All right. And feel free to fill in. So APSHA is taking on a bunch of different things. What we've done, you may have read most recently about the pilot program that they're trying to work out with Woody Creek Mobile Park about replacement of aged units that are beyond their kind of reasonable life, and how to work that out in a way that's equitable for people who've been keeping theirs maintained over time. So with the community about that. Additionally, the board, I think it'll come back in an ordinance, but gave direction to staff to allow for people who've been in their units for more than 10 years and who have exhausted their capital improvements appreciation cap. So if you make improvements to your unit, you can add that price on up to 10% of the maximum resale value for the lifetime of the unit. And so many people have done that. And then now 15 years later, it needs more work. They want to put in more work. They have the money to put in more work. They'd also like to see some that will return to them. And so APSHA has created a program where folks can enter into a new deed restriction that would then allow them to take advantage of that. And there's been interest and requests from people in the program who want to be able to do that. And so the board gave staff guidance on moving that forward. Then we're having a conversation this week to learn about the conversations related to right sizing the inventory and the, what those conversations have looked like and have brainstormed over time. I've been keeping the senior council and aware of those conversations so that they can tune in and ultimately end up kind of fostering conversation with them, among others, about what incentives they might be interested in order to maximize the use of the whole system. And staff is trying to really up their outreach and communication with the community in English and in Spanish, and to really just let people know what APSHA does, what you might need to know if you're interested in getting, participating in the APSHA system, et cetera. And so about what their communication plan is for the year. And hopefully we'll see more of that in the press and on social media and with staff and with testimonials, and that's everything that they have got planned. So I think that's where we are currently with APSHA. Let's see. On my list, CCI, so I'm the Health and Human Services, Justice and Public Safety, Taxation and Finance rep for all of you, and I won't spend a ton of time. I'll just kind of hit on a few things. You heard about Health and Human Services from Lindsay and other staff there. Regarding Justice and Public Safety, there's an interesting conversation in that group. There's a bill that would require text notifications, like a mandatory opt-in for text notifications for court appearances. And, CCI being what CCI is, thinks that this is a lot of hand-holding and creation of a nanny state and that kind of stuff. Whereas folks on the other side of that argument see it as just a really efficient way to keep the courts flowing efficiently and making sure people are showing up for their court appearances and not then getting more charges and more fines related to failure to appear, as well as the pressure it puts on the court docket. So a lot of debate around that bill, and I'm trying to find it on the table here, but I can't currently. Taxation and finance, I think one of the big things to look for is this property tax exemption for childcare centers. It would allow landlords who rent the space, commercial space out for childcare centers to then claim a property tax exemption for that rental. So it's a CCI endorsed bill, and they're trying to push that through the legislator, and it's it's being supported.
Kelly, can I ask you a question about that? Does that apply to, I thought there was something in there about people who use X percentage of their home for in-home childcare being able to get some kind of property tax exemption or something. Is that involved in this at all? Or did I misread the bill?
I don't remember, but let me just do a quick glance. It just says tenant or subtenant. So I don't know the answer to that, Patty.
That would have been a great idea if they had included in that a way to incentivize people to do more in-home care facilities for childcare. But just a thought, if you might want to, if you have the opportunity to throw that out there and see if anybody's thought about that. Great.
Okay, I'm happy to connect you with Jeannie McQueenie too, who is really spearheading this.
Yeah, I'm gonna call, you know what, I need to
that.
call her about another childcare issue with homeowners insurance, so maybe I'll ask her about that too. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And then let me just do a quick scan and see if there's anything else I have missed. There is, so both CCI and CCAT are supporting a bill related to the affordable housing tax credit as well, which expands the cap that CHAFA is allowed to operate under. They have a $10 million cap, and this brings it up to $15 million, which would allow for them to leverage their financing, by another 50%. Let's see, who else is on my list here? CCAT, I won't do a good job summarizing all that right now, but I'll come back to you guys with it. I'm on their housing subcommittee, so my focus there has been a ton of housing work. We're doing a ton of work on short-term rental conversations, and I'm focusing on data accessibility and transparency, and have had conversations with everyone from the assessors to mortgage brokers to banks to property managers to the major platforms, and what they see as opportunities and obstacles related to making their data accessible and available for local governments. So a big conversation there, some interest from legislators to move a bill, but we're not rushing any legislation this session. There's been 3 stakeholder conversations that CCI has convened on this topic that have had anywhere from 50 to 90 people joining on Zoom, and a variety of participation from legislators and stakeholders. So I've been focusing a lot of time on that, with the hopes of being able to do a statewide approach to getting data that would really help inform local regulation and understanding of impacts, as well as the ability to audit tax receipts. And then my last thing, the Colorado River Basin. So again, the work of that group has been on the water plan and the update to the basin implementation plan. There's a very heated conversation happening as we finalize that document, because the submission of our document for the water plan for the Colorado River Basin has said, any further trans mountain diversions will reduce flows in the Colorado River. The Attorney General's office has come back and said, you cannot say that. You need to say may or might or potentially reduce flows. And the roundtable is pushing back, both because they think the AG represents all of Colorado, not just basins on the Front Range. And that it's a truthful statement to say that. And I will just say that I feel like the language in this water plan update is much softer than it's been in the past from the roundtable. The roundtable in the past has said very clearly, very hourly, we oppose any further trans mountain diversions. And it's been softening a bit over time. So I think that's part of why the basin is taking such a pushback on this with the Attorney General's office in order to make the point clear. So that's what's happening there.
Okay, great. Any questions for Kelly? All right, we're going to move to Steve Child and CCI.
Okay, CCI is much the same report. Each of the committees voted in their chair and vice chair for the next 2-year period. I can only think of 2 issues that are out there that I think are of interest that stuck in my head. Of interest to Pickett County. One is an over the snow vehicle use of county roads during the winter time, that counties would have the ability to keep a road closed, prevent a road from being plowed and yet allow over the snow vehicles on county roads. And I think it's Uray County or one of the counties down in the San Juans that brought this forward, but I think it could be applicable to Pickett County going forward. Most of the bills are still, the legislative session is still so young that there's, these bills are working their way through committees right now, and there's not a whole lot to report at this time. There will be, next month, there probably will be a ton of things to report on. The other thing that's happening is the coroner's pay bill, which doesn't affect us directly because we're a home rule county, but there is an amendment that is out there that Eric Bergman keeps asking Kelly and me what our opinion about it is, and it has to do with a few counties that are our same classification to be allowed to opt out of doing the coroner's pay increase. And the Coroners Association in Colorado is really pushing for the pay increase because they have had so many more deaths in the last couple of years because of the pandemic, and the being a coroner is really a highly specialized field that you can't just take anybody and have them be a good coroner. It really is a highly skilled profession, and they want to be paid accordingly to what they're being called upon to do. So that those are the 2 I would say from CCI are of interest to us right now. Moving on to the other things, the Vintage, the former Alpine Area Agency on Aging, is doing a grant application verification committee, which we will have one person from the senior council from Pitkin County will be on that committee to kind of take a look at the grant application from each of the counties in the Northwest COG region. And so every one of the counties makes a grant application for just the funds for the nutrition program and the different things that the Vintage supports. So I served on that committee the last go around 2 years ago, and when you get to the Pickett County one, you have to recuse yourself from the discussion about your own county. But anyhow, that's the one thing that's really going on right now. There were some bylaw changes of just cleaning up the language of Vintage and what it does. Let's see, Club 20 is holding its policy meetings on Thursday and Friday this week in Grand Junction. I will be attending that. Normally in the winter and the summer, they do 2 days of policy, two-day groups of policy committees meetings 2 weeks apart. In the wintertime, they're always held at the Ute Water Conservancy District office between Grand Junction and Fruita. And the summer meetings they'll hold in 2 different towns on far-flung parts of the West Slope, so people can travel to different areas and just see a different part of Western Colorado. For the first time this winter, they have consolidated the 2 separate weeks meetings all into a 2-day period. So every one of the policy committees of Club 20 will be presenting on Thursday and Friday. Some of the ones that are less important, that there's not as much activity, they're going to only have 1 hour to do their sometimes it's public presentations like from a guest speaker. Sometimes it's just, discussing specific policies that need to be eliminated or edited, or new policies. Some of them having to do with public lands and agriculture, especially, and I think transportation, are getting 2-hour blocks of time because they are more important issues for Western Colorado. So that will be a busy 2 days, and I also have 2 other Zoom meetings during the same time that overlap, so I hope that Rachel will be there to cover part of it. I need to get in touch with her to see if we will have one or the other of us at there 100% of the time. Let's see, the senior council is meeting tomorrow, and I know they're probably going to be talking about the idea of participating in the discussion with the city of Aspen about the rec center, the future plan for the rec center. I also know that the person who is applying to be on the senior council, who we haven't interviewed yet, but it is on our future agendas, is supposed to be there. So it's someone I haven't met yet, but they're supposed to be at the virtual meeting tomorrow. It's not in person yet because of the senior center being closed right now to the public. So, and SAPCA has been the 3 main topics of 4 main topics of conversation. One has been
State Senior Board.
working on the editing of the modernization of the Older Coloradans Act. They've been very active in that. The second thing has been on the Colorado Standards of Crisis Care, which is being changed in the Department of Health and Human Services at the state level. This has to do kind of with triage of people coming into hospitals, and if a hospital is overwhelmed, who gets taken care of and who doesn't get taken care of. And so a lot of the language that was in there was really against, it was sort of ageist kind of language. It was intended to be prejudicial against older people and people with disabilities and people from lower economic backgrounds who are less able to afford to pay for health care. So the work has been to bring those standards up to a higher level of accountability and to be fair to all people who need medical care. The third area is just the transition from SAPCA and the old Colorado Commission on Aging into the new CCOA that will be appointed around August 1st and will start work on September 1st. So the SAPCA board and the CCOA board that Chad Fedorich serves on are working together on this transition to try to ensure a smooth transition and get the word out to get good people to apply to be on the new board. Will be an appointed board by the governor, and will be a very important board for aging Coloradans going forward. The fourth area, which is the one kind of a subject matter committee that SAPCA is keeping, has to do with disparities. A lot of times people of color or people with disabilities or people of different sexual preference have been, regarded in a different way on all fronts of, economic fronts and the way they're treated in our society. And if someone is an older person and is also a person of color, especially, they don't have the same opportunities that anyone else does. And so this committee is continuing its work to try to, bring some more awareness and bring the state up to a higher standard in regards to these different kinds of disparities that are in our system. And so that's the 4 things that SAPC is working on, and not much else at this point in time, because we only have a few months left and then we will go away.
Okay,
So
Steve,
that's all I have.
Great, thanks, because I know Greg just sent me a thing, he needs to run out here for family issues. So Greg, if you want to give us a quick update. Steve, then I'll come back if you have anything more.
Got it. Thank you. Just want to say, let's see, CC4CA has been, soliciting members to write op-eds, and I've been doing occasional op-ed writing. Been working on one with now. Very recently, they did have a meeting last Thursday, but it was when I think I had Board of Health and RAFTA, CC4CA, and then a RWAPA board meeting all converged on the same day, and I had to choose. So I missed what happened at CC4CA, but we did get an inquiry I wanted to share regarding the upcoming plastics rules. So I'll start with that. It was a question, what is our position going to be on plastic rules when the state gives us some discretion regarding disposable single-use plastics? Cindy got that, and I think Kelly received it also. So we can open that discussion and talk about what we might want to do as a county, if anything. I don't have anything else for them. Regarding CORE, there was an interesting letter came regarding a $10 million fund for extinguishing coal bed methane fires that's coming to Colorado. And it's possible, because I'm on the Coal Basin Committee working on that, it occurred to me it's kind of ironic that in Coal Basin we're going to try to find this methane and then we're going to try to flare it, right? But meanwhile, in other coal mines, they're going to try to find that methane that's coming out and they're going to try to extinguish it. It's been burning for, it's one of the ironies. The point of it is that we need to locate those methane and coal fires, put them out, and then figure out how to mitigate the methane. So, but it did seem kind of ironic that we're trying to flare it and others are trying to put it out. And I had some questions about that. So we've had a good discussion. CORE is going through, the executive committees and boards are working on governance issues. And I think there's some exciting things coming down the pipe, and I'll share that with you when I get a chance. QQ is going to be meeting early next month. Haven't had one. Not much has happened since, so I don't have anything for you on QQ right now. There may be other things if Kelly sees some. Board of Health, you probably all know about. It was an interesting, we did have public comment, and I'd love to unpack that with some of you at some point. I can't do it now, though. But I think that it'll be interesting to see how things relax. We all have our eye on the numbers for Omicron and the new variants, and let's just keep our fingers crossed that going into spring that this thing dissipates and goes away. Best wishful thinking, but that's where we are. But we're prepared to do whatever has to be done going forward. But I would love to have that conversation about public comment. How do we optimize public comment to make sure we're hearing from a full range in the community? RAFTA, we had the directors, glowing reports from everybody about Dan Blankenship and his team. They're doing a great job. The Basalt downtowner system is up and rolling. They've got 2 vans that are circulating traffic for the first and last mile. That just started last week. RAFTA supported that. They're gas burner vans right now, but hopefully they don't sit there idling. And I'm hoping they go electric sometime. RWAPA had a retreat, but it was exactly during the Board of Health meeting. I don't know if Kelly was able to joined that Rawapa retreat. I know some interesting stuff came out, and then John had alluded to it earlier in an earlier meeting about how, scope of, what's happening with Rawapa, what else is possible, what other needs could Rawapa meet. We'll have some interesting conversations about that. That's really all I've got for you, and I'm sorry to be brief, but I need to run down Valley and check in with a family member who needs me. So I'm gonna split. If there are any quick questions,
Great,
I'll
thanks.
take
I
them.
hope everything's okay. Let us know if there's anything we can do to help.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Greg, if you need someone to cover you on CC4CA in the future, and the alternate can't do it, I'd be glad to try to fill in, because I was very instrumental in CC4CA in earlier years.
Thank you. I'll put it out there. Yeah, thank you. Take care.
Okay, great. Let us know, Greg, if there's
Bye,
anything we
Greg.
can do. Okay, now we have our first debut of John Ely reporting on the River District.
Addie, I think Kelly has a question.
Okay, do you have an update on Rawapa, maybe?
Yep, that's what I was going to chime in a little bit. So I did attend the Rawapa retreat. I had to leave a few minutes early, but was there for the whole rest of the day. And I'll just say, April did a lot of groundwork. She actually called staff for all the member organizations to get input on what staff thinks Rawapa should be working on, and she kind of compared the lists and also kind of looked at lots of lists of other potential projects we've thrown on the board over the years. And I will say there's a lot of demand that Rawapa could fill as far as coordinating a lot of activity related to water use, conservation, leveraging water rights, etc. And Rawapa is facing a structural budget deficit that I think will come back to us for additional contributions to Rawapa. Not in any huge amount, another $5,000 to $10,000 potentially, nothing hugely more than that, but depending on the level of activity that the boards would like Rawapa to take on, it's at a place of figuring out what Rawapa's future is a little bit, and I think those conversations will take shape over the next year or two. The takeaway, I think, from the retreat was to reconvene the Watershed Collaborative group that had been meeting several years ago, and really identify who in that collaborative can start taking on individual projects. Because, the community, the water community has done a really good job identifying everything that could and should be done. And now it's at the point of kind of implementing those plans. Rawapa could really serve a good role as the, I think, main convener of that, and hoping to bring together all the groups to sort of start ticking some stuff off the list. So those were my major takeaways from the retreat, and there will be more to come.
Great, thanks, Kelly. All right, Mr. Ely.
Hi.
Hi.
So the River District, I guess I would start it off with a reminder for members of the public. I know the board is well aware of the structure of the River District, but the River District is a creature of state law, of state statute. It's not a organization that was created locally or by an affiliation or association of the county with other like-minded entities. It is something that was created in Denver, somewhat like the Basin Roundtable. However, it's also an independent taxing entity or district, which puts it on a playing field similar to RAFTA. But you put those two together and it's a bit of a unique organization with unique abilities. And if the board will remember, well, the board certainly remembers, but if the taxpaying public will remember, almost a couple of years ago now, the River District put a tax question on the ballot that was approved through the district in a 15 county or parts of 15 counties area, which essentially comprises the drainage basin within the state of the Colorado River. Now that tax is, I think, what I'd like to mention and relate to the board today. The River District has been discussing and spending quite a bit of time on items like demand management and the current slate of legislative initiatives running through the State House, but they are somewhat perennial discussions, and I can fill the board in and the public more, fill in the public next time. But for right now, I'd like to focus on what's going on with the tax increase. The River District, through its own administrative offices and staff, presented a document to the River District Board. It was not a binding document, but it did state the intentions of the River District in managing the money raised through the tax increase. And fully, my recollection is 87%, but I might be wrong on that, but certainly in excess of 80% of that increase was going to be made available to other entities throughout the district in a program that the district refers to as the Partnership Project Funding Program. So that's a significant amount of cash. Just last week at the continuation of the River District's January quarterly meeting, the River District approved over $1 million in funding to a variety of local concerns throughout the district area. For example, $225,000 went to Delta County for the Fruit Growers irrigation system improvements. Another $250,000 went to Midturn to help them with a municipal storage facility. $500,000 went to Maybell, a little town of Maybell up in Moffat County, who was getting assistance from the Nature Conservancy to improve their agricultural diversion and irrigation systems. And also, maybe more interesting, a little over $100,000 was approved for land use planning with an eye toward water conservation and improved utilization practices. That's going to be focused on between 5 and 7 different local governmental entities, different cities and towns, as well as potentially counties, although there aren't many counties within the district that participate in a water supply program that would be similar to a municipal supply system. At any rate, that type of a grant is very unique for the River District. In the past, the River District used to afford grants for applicants only in regards to physical improvements to existing infrastructure, once in a while for additional or newly created infrastructure items. But generally speaking, it was for only shovel-ready type projects, and for the district to be open now to giving money in a significant way to study water consumption patterns and means of preserving and conserving water resources in regards to municipal systems is quite a departure. So the River District evaluate requests of grants coming into it and to make these awards throughout the year, typically in their quarterly meetings, which occur in January, April, July, and October, but also, throughout the year otherwise. River District has many special meetings that occur at the end of the year to deal with budget items, and at the beginning of the year to keep track of activity down at the State House. So the money that's allocated for this program is really not driven by a singular date on the calendar. The program focuses on agricultural productivity and improvements for irrigation systems. That is something that certainly could be anticipated. Also in improvements in maintenance for physical infrastructure, but also in looking at programs that would enhance healthy rivers. So within that categorization would be projects that would improve, say, fisheries or riparian habitat. Also, the board will entertain grants for conservation and efficiency systems, whether they are for large-scale projects like municipal systems or smaller systems of supply that might be associated with a subdivision or a smaller delivery system. For example, in Pitkin County, our own Phillips Trailer Park, or as it's referred to, or Phillips Mobile Home Park, has its own water supply system and delivery system. Also, the River District is available for grant requests for watershed health and water quality. And that, I think, is probably the most dramatic departure from past practices. The River District is definitely going to try to spread the money available through this grant program around through the various drainages within the district. And that's basically 3. So you look at the Yampa and White River drainage system, the Colorado main stem, of which we're a part, or the Gunnison system to the south, but also spreading that money out through the 15 counties. This is the second year that funds are available for dispersal. And Pitkin County is one of 3 counties for which funds have not yet been dispersed upon any type of grant application or grant request. And that, quite frankly, is a result of no applications coming in from Pitkin County. So I would encourage all the members of the commission, and certainly I will, through the Healthy Rivers and Streams program and board, seek out people who are in need of this type of funding and make sure that they're aware of its availability and turn them onto the process of applying. Anybody who might be listening now, simply Google River District or Colorado River District or Colorado River Water Conservation District. Any variation on that theme will get you into their website and turn you directly into phone numbers or email contacts to get into the system for some help in putting together an application and then filing that application with the district. So it's a great thing, and Pitkin County is certainly in line for obtaining some of this money back from the taxes that we pay into the River District. And I would encourage everybody to talk about this program with constituencies and individuals who are engaged in any water improvement activities or water incubation activities to try to tap into this financial resource that has been unavailable up till now.
Well, John, I think that's a really good point, because one of our concerns when this ballot question came up was we're contributing a significant amount of dollars because of our taxpayer base, and we were concerned about our ability to recoup any of that back through grants. So is this then, would it be possible then at some point to submit a grant application for the potable water issues or water issues at Phillips?
Absolutely.
Then maybe that's something we I think part of our discussion about Phillips is how we can help fund the Phillips issues through grant opportunities, and so this might be a perfect one for us to maybe look into, along with others that we may have that come up. But yeah, that was our concern, and if we don't apply for it, we're not going to get it. So I think we need to be looking at good grant applications we can move forward to see if we can get some of those taxpayer dollars back.
Right. Our own Healthy Rivers and Streams program has a grant program itself. However, the scope is significantly smaller because of the tax proceeds to our program is smaller than the River District. And but for a while, our program was the only game in town. With the addition of this avenue for applying for funds, I think that we can really start expanding, looking around things, whether it's Phillips Mobile Home Park or the situation at Aspen Village with wastewater, or any number of things. Imagination is the only limit.
Yeah, I think we need to start being creative there. Are there any other, John, do you have anything more, or can we see if the board has questions for you?
No, that's it.
Okay, does the board have questions for John? Steve, please.
John, do the other members on the River District Board ever talk about or make comments about our Healthy Rivers and Streams Board and our taxation thing to provide the money for doing projects in the Roaring Fork watershed?
Yeah, you know, the comments and response was more prevalent when the program was first created and the tax was approved by county electors. The discussion now isn't there so much because I think everybody, quite frankly, is aware of it and aware of the abilities that it gives Pitkin County to address issues that are decidedly local and for which we, have our own unique voice. But when the program was first created, there was definitely a bit of envy, I would say. But I think that the need that we had for a program like that might have exceeded other county jurisdictions that are members of the River District, to be honest. So.
Okay, any other questions for John? John, thank you. We look forward to having you be part of this with us when we do our board updates.
Okay.
Okay, unless there's any more comments from the board, we're going to move on to open discussion. We have Cindy Hubin. Rich, just to let you know, she's here in the room. Can we do her item first, if you don't mind?
Absolutely.
Great. Cindy, come on up. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We have her in person in the room. Yay.
Okay, so that's good. I'm good. Okay, thanks.
Oh, there's Mr. Newman. Hi, George.
Hi, George.
It's so nice to see you. We got room at the table here, George. You could have joined us.
A stranger in a strange land.
Yeah, a very missed stranger in a very strange land. All right, Cindy, please.
Well, thank you. I'm glad George is here. I'm going to let George actually do most of the talking, but we have a building permit application in community development for the restoration of a structure in the Hunter Creek Valley, for which George and a group of citizens have put together the Hunter Creek Historic, I believe it's called, Foundation. And they aim to try to preserve all the buildings in the Hunter Creek Valley so that we can all enjoy those. And they're requesting a fee waiver for their building permit, which then goes to the Board of County Commissioners for your approval out of your discretionary fund. Okay. And that's why we're here today. And I think George wanted to explain a little bit about the foundation, what they're doing, and what their plans are for this specific building as well as others in the future.
Okay. George, I'm going to give you the floor. Even though you don't have birds chirping in the background, we'll still let you give a little presentation for us. So welcome.
Great. Yeah, great. Thank you. Thanks, Cindy, for the intro on that. Yeah, I'd like to just spend a few minutes just giving you some background information on the Hunter Creek Historical Foundation, who we are, what we're doing, and what's going on. Just about a year ago, 5 of us, names that you'll all recognize, Howie Mallory, Graham Means, Tim McFlynn, Dale Will, and myself, formed the Hunter Creek Historical Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are a volunteer board. We are a volunteer organization. And our mission is to preserve and stabilize the historic resources up in the Hunter Creek Valley for the public's awareness and for the stewardship of the historic valley. And so, speaking of history, this area up in Hunter Creek, it was homesteaded by William C. Koch around 1881, 1882. And he named the homestead the Adelaide Ranch. And it is very significant alongside of the town site of Independence and Ashcroft in terms of being instrumental in the early development of Aspen. This homestead had a dairy, It provided milk and dairy products to the residents in Aspen at that time, as well as the miners. It provided food. They were grazing sheep up there. It provided lumber for the cabins and for the mines. And it also had probably the first hydroelectric project west of the Mississippi at the time that again was utilized by the local citizens and by the mines. So again, the importance of this homestead, which has stood now for almost 150 years, can't be understated. And our goal is to ensure that the remaining buildings stand for another 150 years. There are about a handful of buildings there, the original buildings. One has completely fallen down. One is barely standing. You've got the prominent two-story roadhouse that everyone is familiar with. And up the valley about a half mile is what we call the Dam Keeper's Cabin. That's where the hydroelectric project was. So it's sort of an interesting project because this is on Forest Service land. And so what we've had to do is we've been able to forge a partnership with the Forest Service that will allow us to pursue our mission and to work on these buildings. And to that end, we have hired a nationally recognized nonprofit organization called HistoriCorps. And HistoriCorps works with the Forest Service throughout the country on projects similar to this, where they are stabilizing, preserving, restoring historic structures on public lands. We're really excited about having HistoriCorps be part of this project, as is the Forest Service. HistoriCorps, they utilize volunteers as well, and volunteers come from around the country. They camp out and work on these projects. And for them, it's not only a way for them to learn about the history of the area, but it's also a way for them to learn about how to preserve and save some of these historic structures with minimum impact on them. So using hand tools and sort of old methods in terms of just having minimum environmental impacts on that. So that's what we're doing. The HistoriCorps, we had them up to Hunter Creek to the site this past fall, where they did a conditional assessment of all the buildings, and they've come back to us with a proposal in phases of how they want to approach each of the standing buildings with a budget. And we are scheduled to have them do the first phase, which we're calling the shop, which is right next to the two-story roadhouse this fall. So we're really excited about that, to get that rolling. We are in the process of developing a website right now that's going to go more into detail in terms of what we're doing. There'll be some great photos. There'll be links to the history of the area. And we're also going to be utilizing that to kick off our capital fund campaign. We're anticipating that we're going to probably need to raise around $250,000 to complete the entire project with all these buildings. And so what I'm asking you today to consider is to waive our building permit fee, and also to consider endorsing our historic project so that we can put Pickens County on our website as an endorsee. So with that, I think I'll answer any questions that you have, or if not, I'll turn it back to Cindy.
Does the board have any questions for, yes, Steve, please.
Well, I'm impressed with this effort, George, and it reminds me of the restoration efforts in Alaska. It's on National Park Service land in the Wrangell-St. Elias National Park, and it's the restoration and stabilization of the Kennecott copper mine facilities that are, are show up on a lot of calendars and whatnot. They're very distinguished looking, tall red mill building and everything. And the Park Service has done an amazing job on analyzing some of the buildings. They actually restored them so people could go in them again. Others, they just did stabilization so the buildings would not deteriorate anymore. Several of the buildings were beyond any salvaging, or they're too dangerous to, and I think they're just going to let them cave in eventually. but I don't know who led that effort, and I'm curious if AmeriCorps of the HistoriCorps was involved in that perhaps, but might be worth just checking out the restoration of the Kennecott copper mine site to get some ideas for possibilities for what you're doing there. This is great. I'd be really glad to have Pickens County endorsement of this project.
Great, thank you.
And Steve, how do you feel about the fee waiver coming out of our discretionary fund?
I would be fine with that.
Okay. Kelly or Francie?
Kelly's got her hand.
Kelly, you got your hand up. It's hard to see. You have a light hand and a white roof. White ceiling.
Great, thanks. Hi, George. Great to see you.
Hi.
Nice to chat with you the other day. And I guess I'm wondering, is Open Space, have they endorsed the project? I mean, I'm happy to endorse it and happy to waive the fees. I'm just curious. I'd probably follow their lead. I can't imagine they wouldn't, but just curious. Thanks.
Yeah, they did. They actually wrote a letter of support that we are using for our fundraising efforts, as well as our partnership with the Forest Service. And they've also been helpful in kind. When we hosted the HistoriCorps, we had a luncheon up there, and they provided a vehicle to bring tables up, as well as the facilities. So they've been very supportive and helpful all along.
Okay, sounds good to me. Thank you.
Yeah, next time invite us to that lunch, George. I mean,
Bring your hammer.
yeah, I'll bring my hand or my handsaw. Francie.
Yeah, hi, George. How are you?
Good.
I'm wondering how much the fee, the permit fee would be.
It's about $1,600 for this permit.
So it's my understanding this is the first phase is $1,600, but the permitting fee, 'cause I already talked to Cindy about it, just so you know, because we have a $10,000 discretionary fund. We just allocated half of that for the Marshall Fire, so we have to be looking at the rest of the year. So we can separate this out, because we've got some other issues where people are asking us to help fund. So
Okay, $1,600. Fine, great. It sounds like a really cool project, and you certainly do have a group of interesting people involved with it.
yeah, it's a
And if I
good group.
could back up real quickly. Thank you. I'm sure that's what George wants to run out of here with today. But when I was estimating all of the buildings that they're looking at for all phases, we're looking at about $8,000, and that can obviously come in incrementally for your discretion. But I just wanted you to know that there is more.
Appreciate that, thank you.
And George, what I would like is if you could send on to me a copy of the Open Space and Trails letter. Let's let the county redraft that and put, so it's coming from the Board of County Commissioners. I don't think we'll have any objections right now with the four of us here to doing a letter of support that you can use, and let us know what we can help to do for fundraising when you get the website up and everything going. We will be sure to get the word out there. I think this is very exciting. It's very cool. So
Great, thanks, Pat. I'll be
Yeah.
happy to send you that.
that would be great. And we can work on redrafting that and getting it on county letterhead and get it back to you.
Super.
All right, thanks, George. Is there anything else from the board on this? George, that was easy.
Well, you never know.
You
It's a tough
never know.
Cool.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all, and
All right,
looks
say,
like it's
say hi to
up
Liz
and
for
running.
us.
Okay.
All right, thanks. Thank you,
Come
Cindy.
back and talk to us about house size, George.
We're not adding to any of these cabins or the roadhouse.
And you don't want a TDR, so we're good.
Yeah, exactly.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Okay, bringing it back. Rich, do you have anything for open discussion?
You could add a woman to that board. They could add a woman. to
Looks
that board.
like we do here, Patty. Just a couple of things from Charlotte's list.
Thanks,
The
Cindy.
Notify Me ad, which is going to go out, looks like Aspen Daily News on Monday, February 21st. It didn't, I guess, paste like it should have, but the verbiage is the same. And really, it's just a notification to the public about signing up on our Pickens County website for notifications. and deals with anything from open space and receiving alerts, emergency alerts, and press releases, and those can be either by email or text. But it is an important notice that we're trying to get all of our
But they're gonna put the public service announcement.
many people as we can on this, given the alerts that do come out. So it's a great way to stay informed. So that is coming out. And then apparently, Patty, there was a discussion at a previous meeting regarding the CEI or CCI public lands dues, and Charlotte says that that those have been paid. In fact.
Great.
So those are taken care of, but the NACO dues are around 450 and not been paid. And if the BOCC is in agreement with paying those dues, Charlotte can submit those for payment. And she has not received any other invoices for public lands that she's aware of. But I just needed a little direction on the NACO dues.
Well, the NACO dues, I know we don't participate as much as we did in the past with Rachel, but it is hard. You gotta spend a lot of time there to get on any of their committees. But I do like getting their newsletter and reading about, because I think there's a lot of good stuff that comes out of that. I send a lot of things on to different departments, Brian Pettit, Kathy Hall, on issues that, especially grant or just ideas about what other communities are doing across the country. So I would like, it's $450. I would like to continue that membership.
Will that bring us current, Rich?
Yes.
And it won't be
I
due
got
again?
6:30 in the morning to present on Sunday to NACO. They should pay me the $450.
At least get a half
I told
rate.
them to do that. So I think we're good with that. That's for the year. So
that's fine.
Yeah. So let's get that. And they also have a great, find the word link things that I always do when I, can't find anything good on TV. I go through my old.
You mean a puzzle?
Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Rich?
That's it, Patty. Thank you.
Okay. Does the individual board members have anything for open discussion?
I just want to tell them that I'm going to be gone.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm going to be gone from March 17th to March 27th. But I'm going to be at a fancy resort with some of my children and grandchildren, and they probably have internet. So I probably won't miss meetings, but just wanted to let you guys know that I will be gone.
She's going to one of those inclusive places. Can you believe it? I want to see how Francie does there with all the music and the food and the liquor and the kids' games. So she may want to go to a quiet space and zoom into us.
Exactly. I've been shunning these places my entire life. Now I've finally relented and I'm going.
So wish I could be a fly on the wall in that one. Actually, I wish I could just go.
So, Francie, which state or which continent is this in on?
I'm going to Cozumel. Rio and Robin had told me about it last fall when they made their reservations. They belong to an organization where you can stay at different resorts throughout the world and you don't pay room fees. You just pay a daily fee, which is food and drink and activities and stuff. And they'd asked me to go, and I was like, no, it's not my kind of place. But then recently I was just like, golly, I haven't traveled for about 5 years. And then Sierra said she'd go with me. So Sierra's not taking her family. Rio and Robert are taking their kids and some friends of their kids, so it'll be great.
A weak moment. They caught her at a weak moment.
I succumbed.
All right, and I will be leaving on Thursday, so I will be gone 26th or 27th. So Francie will be in charge.
So they say.
And I might just kind of zoom in on my sister's computer so you have no idea who I am just to watch.
Well, I won't have you here to rein in, so it's going to be a lot easier.
It's going to be so easy. All right, anything else from the board? Kelly, do you have anything? Nope. Steve, you're good?
I had something yesterday, but I can't remember. I have had a senior moment, and I can't remember what it was.
Well,
I do need to jump off and go pick up.
Okay, you go. And Steve, that's why we have you in all the senior councils, for those senior moments.
That's why people have pens so they can write down notes, but I forgot to write it down.
All right, then if there's seeing nothing else here, I am going to adjourn our work session, and I'll see you all sometime later in the month of March. No, February. I'll be home in February. All right, see you guys. Thank you. Thanks, Grassroots. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.
We are done right on time. I want you to
It
note
is
that.
hard to get a smile out of Kelly these days.